This episode is brought to you by Absolute Landscapes. Absolute Landscapes is a landscape maintenance company that focuses heavily on commercial property maintenance. Call today for information about the services we provide and how we can best help you. 803-427-5944.
But I am really looking forward to this conversation, man. I've been thinking about this for a couple of weeks because there's a lot of passionate, I guess, conversations and topics that I talk about on here, but this is certainly one of those. So yeah, I appreciate you being here. If you want to introduce yourself, and then we can go from there.
Sounds good. Thanks, Cody. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it. So I'm Brenda Wollenberg. I am a multi-careered person, started as a social worker now and did a couple of decades of co-leading a faith community with my husband, and then now a holistic nutritionist. And I ended up in this place right now where I am focusing on interpreting and analyzing raw DNA, so data that someone would get from, say, a company such as 23andMe, to really help people personalize their wellness plans, whether that's physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So, excuse me, it's early morning here, so you're getting the early morning. So it is really a fascinating career. It's probably the most fun I've had in my entire life, and I've loved everything I've done before this. So it's we got 5 kids, and they tease me that I'm finally cutting edge. It's like, took me this long, but it's now at a topic that's quite the forefront. Not a lot of research done on it yet, and it's an evolving field, which means it's fraught with mistakes and errors and all of that. But it is very, very fun to help people have significant aha moments around their wellness once they start seeing some pennies drop that have to do with their genetics.
Okay. So what are like some of the main things that you kind of help people, I guess, maybe learn about themselves? Like when somebody like, I don't really know what to ask here. What's something that you just maybe help people, I guess, learn about themselves, for lack of a better way to say it?
Sure. So when you have your genetics done by whatever company you had your raw DNA done, they basically produce what's called a genome file. It's this big notepad file of just a whole bunch of RS numbers, different genes, which means gibberish unless you run it through some software. So there's a couple of different programs that I would use. And once you get it through that program, then you start seeing clusters of information for the ones that I use, 10 to 12 different areas. So everything from metabolism, so how do you burn your food, to specific dietary macronutrients, carbs, proteins, and fats. Which ones is your body likely designed to function best on? We looked at neurotransmitters, that whole section. So how do you do with dopamine production, serotonin production, stress management, long and short term? We look at exercise with the types of exercise that you might do best on. We look at a spectrum of vitamins and minerals. How well do you absorb them? Vitamin D, for example, do you synthesize it well? Do you convert it to the form it needs to be in? Do you transport it through your tissue? We look at reproductive hormones, thyroid hormones, missing anything here, longevity. So there's a number of different genes that have to do with longevity, and then also things like immune system and inflammation. So that's kind of a smattering of the topics that you could find more out about for yourself. Yeah, so it covers quite a broad spectrum of things. And there's not that there's new genes, but there's new research coming out all the time. So what started out as much less than that when I started looking at this 5 or 6 years ago expands as more research is done, and we learn more.
So this is really fascinating, man. Did I hear you say that you can determine serotonin and dopamine levels from this test?
So let's to understand how genes work, let's take a little step backwards. Okay, I'll give you a little mini biology 101 course here. And fortunately, I partner in my business in this with a cellular nutritionist who's a PhD biologist. So that's the kind of partner you want to have with this, as you would probably roll over hearing my explanations of these sometimes. But, essentially you get a strand of DNA from your biological mom, a strand of DNA from your biological dad. We have tons of genes, only some of which are relevant. I don't mean they're not important. I just mean there's only certain genes that we can actually do certain things about environmentally. So how we eat and how we move and how we sleep, those kind of things, and how we supplement, for example. So within those categories, depending if you get what's called a variant, which is usually the more challenging form of that gene, as opposed to what's called the wild or normal, which is usually a more beneficial, not always, sometimes they switch, but depending which one you got from your parents, if you got normal from one parent and normal from the other parent, you kind of called homozygous for normal, usually that's the best option. So, for example, back to what you were talking about, different kinds of hormones, dopamine, serotonin, for example. If you were normal in the number of genes that have to do with production of dopamine and dopamine receptors, then it's likely that you would, provided all other factors are working great, you would produce adequate amounts of dopamine. And likewise with serotonin, there are a number of different places that we make serotonin, gut, and our brain. Genes will give us a clue as to how easily you can convert that. Both of those hormones are made from amino acids, building blocks of protein, dopamine from tyrosine, serotonin from tryptophan. So you need adequate intake of that in your diet, but then the genes play a role in determining how easily that is converted to the hormone that you need. So yes, long answer to your short question, we can look at genetics and go, oh, you're normal in the production, or you're challenged in the production. You've got a variant gene from each of your folks that's going to impede your ease of which you can produce that hormone. So there might be some things that we would need to do to support that. So that give you a bit of idea there.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like I said, this is fascinating to me, man. And I think so. It's fascinating to me. This is just something I'm generally passionate about, health and wellness. And also, what would you say? Using maybe your genetics and whatever's going to be most efficient for you or beneficial or helpful for you, in the most productive way, whatever. This is something that fascinates me. But I think for a lot of people, they're going to be relieved to hear that, something that works for somebody else may not work for you because the genetics are different. We were talking about this before we started recording, the keto diet, the intermittent fasting. I understand that there's science behind these things, but they might not work for everybody. And if somebody's trying to get into the gym, whether to build muscle or lose weight, these things it's not like a one size fits all, and there's no pun intended there, but it's not like it's a one size fits all thing here. I mean, you have to find what works for you. For a really simple example is I don't know if you go to the gym or how, if you run or anything like that, but a common gym routine is called a split, which is basically where, you do one day you do this, next day you do this. So there's different ways to split it up, but I've found that what works for me is sort of something different than what works for everybody else. Cause I do one body group in a day. And then, the next day is something different. Some people do like the whole upper body in one day. The next is a lower body, and the next maybe is cardio or whatever. But it's like these things, they're different for everybody. And I think a lot of people will be happy to hear that, because it sounds like if you're doing something, if you're going to the gym or you're trying to lose weight, or even if you're trying to build, we'll talk about this maybe a little bit later, but even if you're trying to build a business, the energy that you have to put into these things, like these things come from your genetics, it sounds like. And so it's easy. And I say this a lot, especially with social media, it can be a great thing, but it's easy to get on social media and look at what someone else is doing or how someone else is, or, whether they're losing weight or they're building muscle or whatever. It's easy to look at that and just automatically assume that we are doing something wrong, or maybe it's not meant for us or whatever. But it's like the genetics play a bigger role, is what it sounds like, than we think. So I'm fascinated by this. And I think some people are going to be, like I said, relieved to hear that it's not going to work for them. It's probably going to work different for them than someone else. This is an incredible topic to talk about, because, you talked about supplementation. I think we all hear that, we don't get enough vitamin D and that kind of thing. But first of all, with the supplements, and I know you probably know more about this than I do, there are so many different sources of the supplements. Just because you take something, it doesn't mean that it's going to, I can't remember how many different forms of vitamin D there are. but it's like, or any vitamin, but it's like there's so many different forms, like the way one is absorbed is going to be probably different than the other. And then also, from what it sounds like, the way your genetics are going to determine how that's absorbed anyways, so this is incredible. This is incredible. There's so many different areas we can go with this, but so when somebody does this,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when somebody does a test, like how long do they have to, I'm sure they have to be fasted. I'm sure it's a blood test probably, is how this happens, but
no, it's actually a saliva test. Okay.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
when you're giving testing, and some companies use a spit test, like 23andMe, you get a little vial and you've got to spit in it. And then another company that we use in Canada, although they ship everywhere in the world, DNA Allure, they use a swab. And so it's basically saliva. It's like you see on the TV when they're going to do a DNA sample and they do a little swab or a spit. And it's not so much that the DNA is necessarily in the spit, it's in your cells that are part of your tooth cells. So whenever those of you that haven't done a test yet, if you're thinking of doing it, do a good job of, not, I don't mean chewing literally, but, lightly chewing the insides of your teeth and, making sure you're thinking of something like that's producing a lot of saliva, some favorite meal or something like that, so you can get a good spit test. Then when that is sent off, whatever company you send it to, they run it through their labs and you get back this test. And it depends. Sometimes it's a couple of week turnaround. If you go to 23andMe and they just had a big sale, it can take longer, just because of the turnaround time. And then once you have that genome file and you download it from wherever it is, send that raw data to me, that doesn't change. Like a lot of times clients will come and they'll have just enough information to have looked at some of their data and go, oh man, like I have really, really crappy genes in this area or whatever. So my first thing I always tell people is, barring a few very challenging genetic conditions, I just say, we really don't have crappy genes. Like, do you understand anything about evolution and survival of the fittest? The fact that you are here today sitting in my office with me or on Zoom with me is a really good thing. And what happens sometimes is some of the genes they're beneficial, potentially more beneficial, like a couple thousand years ago. Like there's a gene that actually produces the desire for snacking. Okay. And, people are like, oh, I can't believe that I got that. I'm homozygous I'm normal for this. That means I have strong propensity for snacking. What a ridiculous gene. And I say, okay, let's just think this through. 5,000 years ago, when all your relatives were sitting in the cave playing cards and you were out foraging for food, that's probably a good thing. That's why you're here. They are not, So we just have to realize that gene might be not as beneficial now when you can have food delivered to your door 24 hours a day and you have a mini Costco in your pantry. Okay. So we just have to realize that genes happened, for reasons. Like I have clients that have very challenging, back to vitamin D. They don't absorb synthesize the vitamin D well from the sun. They don't transport it well. And especially if they live like where I do in Vancouver, with it's raining all year and we don't actually even get the sun at the right rays during the winter to be able to absorb vitamin D very easily. It's a challenge. You're going to need to be supplementing pretty high amounts of that. But again, if somebody was on the equator, again, think 5,000-10,000 years ago, and are exposed to vitamin D ability to be produced on their skin very often in a day, and vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, so it is toxic at high levels, those sets of genes would probably have been the ones that would have been very helpful because you absorbed way less of that vitamin D. So people start understanding it's not just a crapshoot, how you end up, like often it's a methodical process that has brought you to where you are. And the whole fun of this, I call body detective work, is exploring it and then helping you know what you can do epigenetically, environmentally, both what's around you and what you're doing for yourself and what you eat and how you manage stress and all that. You have a lot of control over these genes because while you can't change them, like I said, you can't go from a homozygous variant, so from both your folks who got the variant to homozygous normal. That doesn't happen. Your genes are your genes. What you do have a lot of control over, though, is how genes are expressed. So is a challenging gene even going to be expressed, in your lifetime? Have you suppressed a really positively beneficial gene due to inflammation or stress? So what can you do to allow that gene to express itself? So it's very, I think, encouraging and empowering when people begin to understand first how uniquely they're made and come to appreciate that, but then to realize they have a lot of control over what happens with that gene expression. So, yeah.
Man, there's so much. I mean, there's so much here. I've always like we're having this conversation, man. I'm just thinking like, the supplements and the food and all this kind of stuff and how much these things, affect us. Like I've always said, I'll take a real simple example, like fast food or something like Chick-fil-A. I think most people generally have a positive experience in a Chick-fil-A. The staff are usually polite, whatever. But it's like what we think, especially in the fitness world, we think that 1,500 calories is 1,500 calories. But it's like if you go to a Chick-fil-A, this is my personal experience. If you go to a Chick-fil-A and you eat a meal, it's like I don't even feel like I've eaten. Like I feel full, but like I don't feel like my body is replenished. And I don't know if that's because of the vitamins or whatever. I don't know if it's maybe because the nutrients in the food is hard for me to process that. I don't really eat a lot of bread because I just feel like, I just feel bad really if I eat bread. And it's just like and then with the supplements, I can always tell if I go a week or something without one, or if I miss a couple of days or whatever. I feel like I always can tell a difference in the food that I eat and the supplements I do or do not take. And I understand that the supplements are not a replacement. It should be a supplement is what it should be. But it's like, it's just crazy to me how I can literally feel a difference in these things. And I can feel, with the even with the sunlight. I mean, the sunlight, I can feel if I don't get that early morning exposure to my eyes or to my face or to my skin, I can feel a difference. I mean, the first time I ever got the early morning sunlight, it was like 7 a.m., 7:30 a.m. And I felt like I was on a natural high basically for the entire day. I mean, it was crazy, the energy. And then I started doing that every day, and I got accustomed to it. But it's like, yeah, man, if I go a couple of days without sunlight, getting sun to my skin or my face or my eyes, I get very, melancholy like almost. But anyway, I'm just saying, I think it's important for people to understand how these things affect them, whether it's the food, whether it's the environment, sleep is another big thing. Like I've here recently, I've tried to, I think we're all aware of the fact that, sleeping in a cooler room is going to be better for us, better sleep wise. But I've tried to do, I bought like a little red light for my bathroom, put a little red light bulb in before I go to sleep. And it's just like these things, it's crazy to see how these things affect you. But going back to what we were talking about, understanding how these genetics are, man. What would you, so like, what is there a common person that comes to you? Is it like a person who's just trying to maybe lose weight, or just in interested in health and wellness? I mean, what is there a range of people? I'm sure probably.
Oh, yeah, total range. And it can be, I work with young athletes, hockey players, basketball players, people who are trying to get college scholarships or that kind of thing. Excuse me. I work with, I would say if there was a common denominator with everyone, is that they're confused. Like the common denominator is I don't know what to do. I don't know how to eat. Like if we look back, 5,000 years ago, I doubt anybody was saying, I don't know what to eat. Like, I mean,
Right.
you ate what you could gather, hunt, fish, pluck kind of a deal in your local area. You didn't have to wonder if you should be eating tropical fruit if you lived in, North America, the tip of Antarctica or something. It wasn't an issue. Nobody was flying in pineapples to you. So I think the biggest thing, the common thing is that people are confused. And yes, they want to gain wellness. I would say 4 probably broad categories. Everyone is tired to some degree. They, they just feel like they're fatigued middle of the afternoon or whatever, don't have enough energy. I find a lot of people are low in mental clarity. Like they just don't feel as sharp as they used to be, or maybe ever. They just feel like they're behind the eight ball kind of with, quick thoughts and being able to stay focused. I would say another category that ripples through a lot of my clients is mood disorders. It helps that I have a training and a career in social work and be able to layer that with some of this. But a lot of people feel that they are, and it's not about not having a range of emotions. I really want everyone to be able to experience full range of emotions. They feel that they can't do a good job of regulating them. And they are either, low when they can't necessarily see a natural reason why that might be. They didn't just lose a parent or whatever, And then lastly, you mentioned this a couple of times. A lot of times people come with digestive issues or weight issues, either underweight or overweight. And as per se, I'm not a weight loss nutritionist, weight loss practitioner. Number one, because I really think every body comes in different sizes, and that if you're trying to compare yourself with somebody else and how much they weigh or what size of clothing they weigh, that's just a recipe for disaster. Okay. But having said that, I do know that we all can feel best at a certain size. It feels right on our frame. It enables us to, move the way we want to, be down playing with kids or grandkids, hiking. We a couple summers ago, my husband and I, with some friends, did this fly-in. Literally, it dropped off on a lake up in the interior of BC, and basically there was canoes there waiting for us, and we spent the next 6 days portaging and canoeing and hauling all our own gear. In the 6 days, we only saw one only party the whole time. Thank goodness we saw no grizzlies, so I was really happy about that. But, I didn't really think anything about it until we come back and we're talking with our kids and friends, and they're like, oh man, you could do that? Like, you guys, like, you're old, you're hauling canoes around and portages and doing all your own, whatever. And I think when people think about, say, weight or energy, they forget to apply it to real life. Like, I don't want to be a certain weight so I can have this number. I want to be able to do stuff like that. I want to be able to easily, be able to continue to do that. And so I want people to think about size in terms of what size do you need to be at to enable you to do the things that you want to do in life easily and well and for a long time, So those are the categories: energy, mental clarity, mood, and then digestion, bloating, excess body fat, kind of a deal.
Okay.
So,
yeah. So you mentioned about the weight, man. I think, I think a lot of people think about, heart and lungs and, maintaining a healthy heart and healthy lungs. But I don't think a lot of times what, we take into consideration enough is our joints. And I think you mentioned this maybe when we were talking off camera. Because it's you have to have a healthy heart and healthy lungs, that kind of thing. But it's like, if your joints are not, if you can't move around, you're not gonna be able to exercise or do anything. And it's like, I feel like the joints, just especially the knees, I just feel like they are not, we don't pay attention to them, and I'm sure you can probably tell me if whether that's something with collagen or a lifestyle, or if maybe we're carrying too much weight, then I don't want to say design that we're designed for, but this healthy for us, or maybe a combination of these things. I don't know, but I think that it's important for us to think about joints and joint health.
Yeah. And there are a number, like you said, there's a number of factors that impact that. There's things like the types of food that you eat. So some people, for example, don't do well on the nightshades. That's like potatoes, eggplant, peppers, chili, so that can produce an inflammatory response in people that don't do well on those. I'm one of those. Okay. So I'm someone, I can have some, but I have to keep them at a low threshold, as we mentioned before we started recording, I'm just back from a lovely time in Mexico where I just enjoy eating all the hot spicy foods and I'm like, oh yeah, I can give myself arthritis like in 10 days if I don't watch it here. So nightshade is one thing. You mentioned collagen. That's another huge thing. And we think about collagen often in terms of joints and skin, for example, but we just don't realize that collagen is like everywhere in the body. Collagen plays so many really important roles. And we actually have genes that determine how easily we produce collagen and different types of collagen, call 1, call 5, for example, that kind of thing. So it can be a dietary issue. It can be a genetic issue. And then also just, using them properly, like making sure that if you are something, we talked before about the fact that your genes actually dictate the types of exercise that you are more designed to, and this called the collagen genes, inflammatory genes, genes that have to do with repair of tissue really help dictate whether you are someone that's better with the high intensity interval training, the plyometrics that you might do at a CrossFit, for example, a lot of the stop and start, basketball, soccer. Some people are just not designed well for that. And so it takes a toll on your knees and your ankles. And so if I have clients that love those types of activity, and we look at their genes, and I'm going like you're a walking disaster. You're going to give yourself problems here. Then we look at modifying that. I love HIIT stuff. I have the genetics for it, but I have the collagen and inflammation genes that mean I need to tone that down a bit. So I no longer go to Tabata 100% full on. It's like maybe 70 or 80 and give myself a bit of a longer break in between because I will pay a price for it in my joints if I'm not careful. So it's just, you get to modify, still do things you like doing, but do them in a way. All of our kids were super athletic. They inherited both of my husband's lousy genes. Lousy, you know what I mean? I don't bad genes, but you know what I mean? Problematic genes in this regard. If I'd have known what I know now, I would have invested in shares in K-tape, and I just would have taken them all up all through their athletic lives, So knowledge is helpful because you can tweak things, biohack things, so that you're supporting your body as well as possible.
Well, see, and I'm glad you bring this up because this is a really good point. Something I was trying to, touch on earlier. It's like these things are, you might be, I hate to use the word designed because that seems like it's something that's outside of your control as far as what you can do to improve health or wellness. But it's like, whatever benefits you the best, let's say it that way, whatever these exercises are. Because I know me personally, I feel like I do not have the body type to be a runner. I don't, if I do a cardio, if I do a cardio workout, it's usually not the treadmill because it does bother my knees and my joints so bad. And I've also found out too, the elliptical, I can do just as intense a workout on the elliptical for longer and feel better when I get off. And I mean, that's kind of the whole goal. Like you're not training, to run a marathon on a treadmill here. I mean, so but you mentioned that, and I think that's a good point because I feel like people might try to do something because the first thing they might do, they just see everybody jogging, on a treadmill or in the morning or whatever, and they might try to do that, and they're like, "Man, this sucks. This hurts." What? And it's like, you might not. That might not benefit you the best. Like swimming might be something for you. The elliptical might be something for you. And it's crazy that you bring this up because it is so important. I think for people to realize that what works for somebody else doesn't work for you. I've talked about this before with the 5 a.m. rule. Some people might be okay and very productive waking up at 5 a.m. If I wake up at 5 a.m., I'm not getting anything done until 9. Like I am one of those people. Like I simply cannot wake up at 5 a.m. and be productive. I can wake up at like 7-ish and be way more productive, the rest of the day. I don't know what it is about it. I'm the kind of guy that I'll be working late at night versus early morning. I don't know. Maybe there's a gene for that. I don't know. But I just know that 5 a.m. is not my thing. And it's just like you have to figure out what works for you because the bottom line here is what all this boils down to. Yeah, you can get on the treadmill and you can try to, be out of, you can not ever be in the gym at all, or you can be out of the gym for a couple of years and you can get to the treadmill and you can try to run 3 miles right off the bat. That's probably not going to work. You're probably going to injure yourself. But the bottom line is you have to do these things however you can do it consistently, because that's what's going to be the key. I mean, you can go on the treadmill once a month and you're probably not going to see much results for that. But if you do it consistently, even if it's not the treadmill, even if it's swimming, even if it's the elliptical, the bike, whatever it is, whatever works for you, if you do it consistently, and this is what I try to explain to people. I'm like, you have to find something that works consistently for you, because the consistency is going to be the key when it's the, building the fitness thing. I wanted to ask you, is there a gene, can you see genetically somebody's, I guess maybe production or usage of collagen? Can that be determined from a gene test? Like can you see if somebody's, I don't know, maybe not producing enough collagen, but just because like the collagen supplements, I think there's a lot of debate on those, whether or not taking them does anything. I mean, I don't know. I'm just kind of asking if there's anything you can see genetically with collagen.
Yeah. Collagen, there's a couple of collagen genes that we look at regularly in the more extensive reports that we do. And yes, you can tell if collagen production is going to be a challenge. And therefore, we do recommend a collagen supplement. Or like bone broth, for example. Bone broth is amazing. And so if people are willing to make some of that or buy some of that, that's a great way to get collagen on a regular basis. For me, I personally take several different forms of collagen, mix it up over time. Just because I went, oh my goodness, this is one thing I wish I would have known, like 25 years ago. Now I learned it 5 or 6 years ago. So then I'm going to attend to that, and it does make a difference. It just helps if you are low in the ability to produce that, then supplementing with that can be helpful. So yeah, and I think that's it. You mentioned earlier about supplements being something that is supplemental, and I agree with that. That's the other reason, one of the other many reasons I love doing the genetic work is that, with supplements, a lot of times people take it because they read about it in a magazine or their buddy's taking it or whatever. And if you don't need it, it's actually not a good thing to be taking it. Like, we don't want to be flooding ourselves with things that are not necessary. And the supplement industry, as you alluded to a little bit before, is rife with, I don't know how to say this nicely, but like fraud. Whenever they do studies on different supplement companies, and they'll just randomly pull them off the shelf and take them into a lab, and it's either not the amount of whatever, say magnesium or whatever's supposed to be in there, or it's not the type of magnesium. It says it's magnesium glycinate and it's not a cheap magnesium citrate or whatever. Like, it's unfortunate that we just can't trust the supplement companies that are there. So that's why over time I've kind of honed down mine to, a few that I really trust, that I know the quality of their ingredients. Some of them that actually even get the genetic component. So they are making their supplements. When I mentioned earlier that one of the categories that we look at is people's, vitamin and mineral ability to absorb and utilize that. For many of the vitamins and minerals, like take vitamin A, for example, the form that the body uses it is retinol. But the form that we get in food, if we're only eating vegetarian food sources, is beta carotene. So that comes from carrots and orange and red peppers, and basically orange and red and yellow colored fruits and vegetables. So we get that beta carotene. Some of us are much easier able to convert that to the form that our body needs it in. But I partly this has been a very humbling journey, because I can hear myself, 15 years ago talking to my vegetarian clients, which I had been at one point, and saying, oh, don't worry if you don't eat animal products. You don't need eggs. You don't need any kind of meat. Don't need any dairy products. You'll get your vitamin A from your, these vegetables. And what I should have said, and what I say now is, you might be able to get it for that. I actually don't know if you have the genetic ability to convert that. And if that's the case, then you actually could be taking a supplement with retinol in it because you're a candidate for night blindness and all the other things that begin to happen with vitamin A deficiency. So where I was going with that is one company in particular that I use a lot of their supplements with my clients actually understands this conversion process that's needed, that we don't need folic acid, we need folate, we don't need beta carotene, we need retinol. So their supplements are only made with the end product that we need. So then I don't have to worry about whether my clients don't have their genetics done. I don't have to worry that they're going to be missing out because they don't have the ability to convert it to the form the body needs. So those are some things. Yeah, you want quality, you want, good manufacturing practices on the supplements, you want to see a lot of good reviews, and then you want companies that know what the heck they're talking about, So that weeds out a lot of companies.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you definitely got to be careful on the supplements, man. You got to do your research. There have been athletes who have been banned from whatever they were participating in because the supplements that they had trace amounts of anabolic steroids because the company, they make like a steroid free supplement, then they make a steroid supplement. Well, they don't clean the containers properly. And some of those trace amounts get into the other, and these people get banned from this when really the story is that they didn't know, the anabolic steroids were there. But I think that's a true thing. That leads us into a different question here. And I'm asking this because I know I'm going to have some people, I've had people ask me this before. And if these people hear this episode, and they're going to think this, the genetic test, does it show you any kind of hormones, estrogen, testosterone, or maybe what you can produce, with that? Because I'm kind of leading into a question here because I want to ask if, some of the people, specifically the men that take these tests, if the depressive mood disorders or the anxiety or whatever, is that linked to some sort of deficiency with manufacturing or processing testosterone. And the reason I'm asking that is because I've had guys in their 20s say to me that they want to supplement with testosterone because they do not feel I guess how they should think they should feel in their 20s. And I'm like, dude, look at your lifestyle though. Look at your diet. Like you're not getting outside. You're not active, whatever. And so I don't want to answer the question for you, but I'm just, that's why I'm leading into this. That's because I have zero issue if somebody, if they feel like they want to use steroids for whatever reason, that's kind of their own choice. If they want to replace testosterone TRT, that's kind of a different thing. I understand that. And that's also a different thing, but I don't think that should be the main solution to something that maybe could be fixed with diet or sunlight or activity or whatever. So I don't know. Just your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So what's really interesting, so you asked if the test that the software that we use can evaluate that. Yes. One of the softwares, no, but the other software, yes. And so with my longer programs, we look at reproductive hormones. We look at estrogen, we look at testosterone. And from that, you can tell, because both men and women make both of those hormones, you can tell whether or not someone would be easily producing enough of either one of those, or potentially producing, say, too much of the form of estrogen that is more prone to cancer as opposed to the form that is protective. So those are the kinds of things that we can break down to it. Now, what's interesting is even if I had a client who wasn't producing easily enough testosterone, the first thing I wouldn't be sending them to do, and nutritionists don't diagnose or treat, okay? So I wouldn't be sending them to their MD or their MD for a prescription on this.
Right.
What I would be looking at is, and this is one of the things I love about my role, is we can go back several, steps along that chain, which is that number one, okay, saturated fat, cholesterol is where all of our reproductive hormones are made from. So I'd be looking at diet. Are you someone that has fallen into the trap of believing that saturated fat is bad for you? So it never touches your lips, okay? You don't eat butter, take your skin off your chicken, you don't eat any dairy, like I'm like, okay, we need to make sure you've got some raw materials here to make some of this. Number two, what's the stress levels like? Because often what is happening is the different systems in our body are competing for our raw materials to make different types of hormones, for example. And so if you're under a lot of stress, then that can be happening. Thirdly, just stress in general can cause, and the stats vary, but 70 to 90% of your genes to be moved into the less favorable position. So even if you had your green light, you had double normal on testosterone production from both of your folks, but you had been under a lot of stress, that gene could be impaired in its expression. And so it's not like, and that's the thing. It's not just like if you go to someone, and there's a lot of companies now that you can just send them your raw data and they'll just send you a nice, really cool booklet, all beautifully pictures, color coded, and it'll tell you, if you can do carbohydrates or saturated fat, and it might even tell you that you're better on endurance or you're better on HIIT. Excuse me. What I find a lot of those are missing is the interplay between all of this. That's why when I say I'm coming to focus more and more on analysis, but also interpretation of the data, because it's not just about, oh, you have this gene, this is what you need to do. It's about, oh, you have this gene and this gene and this gene and this gene, and oh, this is what's going on in your life right now. Oh, do you realize that car accident you had last month that give you full body inflammation has completely suppressed, the ability of these genes to operate in the way that they want to. So it's those kind of little package things can be a good place to start, but they don't give you enough data to be able to then roll out these other things. So if I had someone with genetic propensity to low testosterone, the first thing I would do is not send them for testosterone supplements.
Right.
It's like, let's what else is going on? And let's look at the rest of your genes. You have this, it's called an APOA2 gene, high need for saturated fat. Like people that do well on the ketogenic diet, often have the saturated fat genes that like literally demand a higher amount. My husband, one of my kids is like that. And like, I just want to throw up at the amount of fat they eat. It's like, they're like, you're going to eat that skin off your chicken? I'm like, no, can I have it? Go for it. Okay. But if this person that was complaining of low testosterone, had a very high need for saturated fat and they weren't hitting that amount every day, they're going to have a problem to produce it. So it's more fun because you actually can give very practical, sustainable types of solutions to have these genes operate in their best capacity.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it did. It's just like, man. So the issue I have with this, and it's not just the testosterone thing. It's literally. I was talking to a doctor a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about, just how, what I don't even know what the SSRIs. I think they're called the antidepressant medicine and stuff. It's almost like it's overprescribed. Like we just think like we live in a society, a civilization where we have a lot of things at our fingertips, and I think that can be beneficial for in a lot of cases. But I think also too, if we get too accustomed to that sort of thinking, that's where we can really hurt ourselves, or at the very least keep ourselves stagnant where we're at. Because I just don't think, man, that taking a pill or taking an injection should be the first thing on the list of things to solve a problem, especially something this complex, because it's not just, if you don't have, if you feel like your testosterone is not where it's supposed to be and you are not active, your diet's not good, you're not getting out of sunlight, you're not socializing with people, and you just inject more testosterone, well, you're still going to have these other problems. Like these other problems are still going to be there. And so it's like, I understand that the testosterone is supposed to make you feel euphoric and it's, all this kind of stuff. I understand all that. But like, you're putting a Band-Aid on something that you might not even need the Band-Aid for if you were just to fix the initial. Anyways, I don't know, but it's just this immediate this immediate solution, this immediate gratification sort of way of thinking about things.
Yeah.
And I think especially young guys, when they first of all, I think there's very few people who in their 20s or probably even 30s should even think about supplementing with testosterone, because that's not going to solve whatever problem they think they have. I think what they think they're going to do is, build the big muscles and all this kind of stuff. And that has its downsides, man. That's not a long-term thing that you probably want to do. But I just feel like the lifestyle changes, if we were to make the lifestyle changes from whatever they are, I feel like there would be so much that would improve just because of that. And that's kind of what I was leading into was, do you see like with the depressive, I guess the mood disorders, the genetics for the mood disorders, do you see a correlation there with like, so the people who have the mood disorders, is there a connection? Do they also have like they can't use the vitamin D or absorb the vitamin D? Is there some more other connection? I mean, are there connections here? That's kind of what I'm trying to get at, because I feel like, we always hear about vitamin D, and, when COVID was at its peak, everybody was like, oh, take vitamin D, and it's the helps the immune system and the energy and this kind of thing. And I think it's like something like 75% of the country is deficient in vitamin D. And so I'm just trying to see if there's a connection here with the mood disorders and this, like the vitamin D and anything that might be a connection here, because I feel like, well, I don't know. I don't want to say anything else. I want to hear your thoughts.
Absolutely. One of the things that I teach a lot on is what I call no matter what. So what are the things that you are going to do no matter what? Because these are the foundational things. My company is called Imbalance, but the balance is actually an acronym. The first B stands for body type. That was before I knew about genetics, so be body or genetic type. First A is for attitude. The L is for laughter and play or stress management. The next A is for activity and exercise. The N is for good night's sleep, and C for clean water, and E is for eating for health. Those are the no matter what. Like, those are the things I have clients put in place first. I have them come back to that if they go away on a holiday and they drink a whole bunch or they do whatever and they come back. It's like, those are the foundational things, and you see them across cultures, across time, generations, people eating real food, locally sourced, people getting enough sleep, people having play in their life, finding things that they enjoy, people having ways to manage stress, and again, across cultures, across time memorial, we've done things like meditation or centered prayer or mindfulness. Like, we didn't call it that, okay, but those have been patterns. People ate and enjoyed and celebrated. They had like 7-day weddings, for Pete's sake, okay, and then they had periods of fasting, whether it was through Ramadan or 40 days in a desert or Lent or whatever. Like, we've had these culturally and different faith communities, and we've had these ways of living life that served us really well. Then, like you alluded to, we got on the quick fix bandwagon. And I mean, I'm glad I live in North America. Like, we had a kid get hit by a train, like we like, there's times when I'm really glad I can get someone just rush to an emergency and save their life. Okay. Having said that, our typical medical profession, and I have highly respected doctors in my life, et cetera, but they're just not trained in the preventative, proactive, so we need to realize that we're asking them the wrong questions. They're not able to answer us. So we need to go to other experts in different things so we can get the no matter what. We'll get you to fix, broken legs and, acute things, but what are the things that I need to do on a day-to-day basis that are going to keep my mood balanced, that will give me energy, that will have me a clear head and able to maintain a comfortable for me size for the rest of my life, kind of a deal. So yes, I think we go to the quick fix usually too often. Having said that, I worked with people when I was in social work that were so seriously depressed, there's no way I'm going to sit and have a conversation with them. Let's try 3 months worth of eating better, getting sun on your face and doing this, and then let's reevaluate. No, like, you are suicidal. Like, we need to do something right now. So I think we need to recognize the benefit of a quick fix thing in a certain situation, but realize it is not the solution long term. SSRIs are prescribed often, the serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And we are now, I don't mean me personally, I just read the research, I'm not doing the research, but it's clear now that too much serotonin is also a problem. And so we would be better off potentially helping people elevate their moods with the studies show daily walk, as helpful as some SSRIs in some people. The sun on your face that you've alluded to several times, huge fan of that. Circadian rhythm resets with that, getting enough of the fats, getting enough of the vitamin D, having social stimulation. All of those things are things that benefit us emotionally and mentally. And then also even understanding, like, there's lots of real cool testing. I'm a fan of different kinds of testing, but Enneagram is a really cool way of looking at personalities and, doing some kind of that, or a Berkman, to see whether you thrive on being with people or you actually rejuvenate when you're more off on your own. Like, those are really, really important things to know about yourself. So on, Friday night, if your partner, who's the polar opposite of you, wants to head off to a party as their method of rejuvenating themselves after a busy work week, you can say, hey, babe, and I speak from experience on this, hey, babe, enjoy yourself. I'm going to sit here and read a book tonight, okay, by myself. No one come over, So those are, like, there's a big topic there, but mainly I want the people I work with to do two things. I want them to better know themselves, and then I want them to get to the point where they can trust themselves. Because, like you said earlier, there's a lot of different things we can do, different diets we can do, different ways we can work out at the gym, different times we can go to bed and get up. If we are always ignoring what our body is saying to us and trying the latest, greatest thing that's coming along, if we don't actually grow to trust our body, we're hooped. So that's what I try to help clients do, is get the data and then start applying it and learn what it feels like to feel like top of your game. And when you start to shift a bit, what do you need to do to get back to that?
I love the way you put that, knowing yourself, because this is knowing yourself on a genetic level. I mean, this is knowing you genetically. I mean, I don't think there's a better way to know yourself other than, than this. Let's do this, because I'm well over your break. Let's take a quick break really quick, and we'll be right back. I got some other things. I think we're going to get into the food and this kind of thing when we come back here. But anyway, we'll take a quick break really quick.
Okay, sounds good.
So I guess to maybe wrap up on the genes, and I don't know, maybe I should have asked this to begin with, but I assume, and maybe assuming isn't the right thing, but I assume that if you have this genetic makeup, let's say, that's something that's sort of permanent, right? So in other words, if you take a gene test at 20 and you take a gene test at 50, it's going to be the same thing. Is that probably right?
Yeah, it's correct.
Okay.
And I liken it to that electrical panel that you have in your basement or your garage or whatever. Excuse me. So when you're born, those switches are, a certain way. They're either, like I said, they're the variant, or you got one of the variant and one of the normal, or you got two of the normals. The actual coding, the letters, it's A, C, T, and G, those are the same for your whole life. Excuse me. What does change, though, is how you flip those switches. So can you get a challenging gene to lie dormant? Dr. Bruce Lipton, I read one of his books, I think it was called The Biology of Belief, a lot of years ago, and he talked about where they would be in the lab, and it's almost like this little sheet got pulled over a little section of DNA so that gene was not allowed to express itself. He would probably die at my explanation of that too, but So it's like, can you keep the switches through your epigenetics, through the environment and what you're doing for yourself to be in the most optimal position? So the genes don't change as to what they are,
Mm-hmm.
but you can control to a large degree, not everything, but to a large degree, the expression of those genes.
Okay. So probably the last thing on genes, and I'm sure this is a combination of, there's probably not a specific gene for this. This is probably a combination of things, but just in your experience, is there anything that sort of indicates or explains how, because overcoming adversity is a big topic on this podcast. Is there anything that would sort of indicate or explain why a person handles difficulties the way that they do? Because I don't know if you know who Andrew Huberman is. I'm a huge fan of Huberman. I heard recently on his podcast there's an area of the brain called the anterior midcingulate cortex, which is basically being seen these days as the discipline muscle, because people who do things they don't want to do in a disciplined way, whether it's workout or whatever, people who do those things over a long enough period of time, this area of the brain is bigger. These people are also generally healthier. These people live longer. So this is sort of seen as the discipline muscle in your brain when you do the things that you don't want to do, but you discipline yourself to do them type thing. So, but with like overcoming adversity and things like that, it's just like there's so many different ways that people handle it. Some people step into it. Some people are energized by stress. Some people sort of shy away from it. And I'm just curious, genetically, is there something there that explain? I know there's probably tons of things that explain why a person does that, but I'm just curious if there's like a gene that says this person might do this way. Because for example, one of the reasons I'm asking this, man, when I get energized, like I've noticed if I'm in the gym or if I'm doing a difficult work project or if I'm doing something that I feel like is difficult, like I don't know how to explain how it energizes me. Like it energizes me to push through that thing. And I've heard other people say the same thing. And I know that when you work out, there's the endorphins and all that kind of stuff. That's really, I understand all that, but this is more like the like overcoming the struggle type thing. And I'm curious, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Just how people handle different things.
So first off, to my knowledge, there is no singular resilience or overcoming the obstacle gene. Okay. And there's lots of things like that. There's lots of conditions where there's not one single gene for it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What I would say though is that there are a number of different genes that could contribute to that. For example, there's what's called a COMT gene, COMT, and it plays a lot of roles in the body, does lots of different things. But one of the things that it does is it degrades hormones, so it breaks them down, and that's a good thing if you have too much of cancer-prone estrogen one, for example. But it also does that with things like dopamine. Okay, dopamine we know does lots of different things as well, but typically sense of pleasure, sense of motivation, sense of perseverance, sense of joy. The dopamine contributes to, among other things, help with that as well. But that's often what we think about with dopamine. So COMT then breaks down dopamine as well. So while it's helpful at breaking down some problematic things, when you want to have more dopamine, because that is going to help you focus, stay on task, persevere on this difficult, challenging thing. If you have a really overactive COMT gene and you happen to not have a lot of dopamine production and receptor production genes, that's a challenge. So innately, you're going to be low on dopamine. That's going to impact your ability to do these things that you want to do. So there can be a real innate genetic component to someone's ability to persevere in situations. COMT, we actually, it's been labeled where you're either the warrior or a worrier based on if you are homozygous for the variant or the normal. So you think about someone who's an EMT, for example, emergency room nurse or paramedic, whatever. There you really want them with the warrior mode, like just focus, like in here, the exact person you want to have in a challenging situation that can persevere, even if their own leg is broken, they're going to, go and save somebody else or whatever. Where they probably have trouble is doing the paperwork afterwards. that needs to be written up, and because that's the worrier's expertise. They are
Right.
really great at the mundane, routine, pay the bills, get that stuff done. But in the panic situation, they would have been immobile. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, some of this, how we respond to pressure and moving through, is that COMT. Some of it is the dopamine. And just, we may explore this a little bit later too, but just the other component with the dopamine is not only can there be a more challenging aspect of the resilience if you're really low in that and the perseverance, but then we will often gravitate to something else to fill that void because we have to have dopamine. It's not like we can just say, oh, I'm low in dopamine, no big deal. No, then I'm either going to move towards some type of substance, cocaine, alcohol. We move to alcohol, even though it's not actually helpful in that regard necessarily. Or we might use a fuel like sugar, for example, refined grain products. Something for some people, it can be dairy products as a bit of an opiate response for them. So we might move to something that's more socially acceptable, become a workaholic or an athlete that just exercises to the nth degree, or we may choose risky sexual behavior or pick up paragliding or whatever, like something that is going to elevate that dopamine, that a byproduct of it will be the resilience that you're talking about. So yeah, there's not a gene for resilience, but there are a number, I just gave you a couple, but there are even more beyond that, that would be impacting our ability to stay to a task, stay focused, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense because I know a couple people who have overcome some sort of addiction, and now that they're sober, man, these people are very productive. I mean, they're just like, they're just with their business, and they got several different things going on, and it's just like, man, I guess it's just how a person uses that energy. There's that energy is not the right word. I don't mean it in a speed up type of way, but just how they harness that inner awareness and energy. I guess it makes a lot of sense. We were talking on the break about, I think this is a good, it's not really a segue, but it's a good place to kind of get into the food, because we were talking about like, how all these things affect us. And I know that the genetics can tell us a lot about what's going on, but earlier in the conversation we were talking, and I wanted to ask, do you see a connection? Is there a gene for like celiac disease? Because what I'm hearing is that celiac, there may be a gene, I don't know, maybe there's a gene for it. I don't know. I know it's a spectrum. Different people have different reactions. But I think from my very limited knowledge of this, is what celiac mostly is a reaction to the grains, basically the chemicals that are used on the grains, the glyphosates and that kind of thing. So is it that this is something that I guess they are kind of born with it, because it affects them differently than it affects somebody who doesn't have it. But I know for like me, myself, I don't quote unquote have celiac disease, but if I go eat a big bowl of pasta, I'm going to feel lethargic and lazy and, not productive at all afterwards. But it seems like it's a spectrum, because I actually dated a girl one time and she has celiac. She could not eat bread or wheat or soy or any of it because she would get really sick. So I'm that makes me think, man, like how much of this stuff is actually genetics, or how much of it is we just simply have, for lack of a better way to say it, just garbage in our food, because I feel like I've heard, people like Joe Rogan and Gary Brecker, we were talking about those guys. They say if you go to Italy and you eat a bowl of pasta, it is not like the pasta here in North America. It is not like the, lethargic, overly full type. It's not like that. And I can't imagine eating pasta that's not like that. I mean, I've never had pasta that does not make me feel that way.
Have you eaten Italian pasta in Italy?
I have not. I've never been to Italy. No.
You have not yet. Okay. You just asked a really great question that touches on about a zillion different things. So I'm going to break them down. Okay. If there is a celiac gene, like I'm not aware of that. We don't screen for that in the software that I use. Okay. What we do look at, and what I do know about the clients that I've had that were celiac, is that it can be related, as you mentioned, to the glyphosate. Okay. My PhD biologist business partner teaches whole trainings on glyphosate, okay, Roundup, etc. And basically what it does is it actually interferes with the lining of your intestine. And the way that it does to take care of the pesticide that would be on the plant that's being sprayed on, okay? So it can contribute to that great term that we've all heard, the leaky gut syndrome. Okay, so then some people that are more prone to that may have trouble with the protein in wheat, the gluten, for example, and that will be absorbed through the larger pores in their intestinal lining directly into their bloodstream. And it's not meant to do that. It's meant to be broken down a bit more. So the body sees it as an invader and attacks it as such. So that's a simple explanation about why the glyphosate could be playing a role for some people in that. For other people, and I also don't test, we don't screen for a gluten gene. I'm not even sure if there is one. Potentially, there probably is. What instead we look at more is that carbohydrates in general, as to whether or not people's tolerance for carbohydrates is higher or lower. So there's probably 3-4 different genes that we look at that determine whether people do well on a higher percentage of carbohydrates. And that has to do primarily with the way that they absorb it. So how quickly is blood sugar levels increased with that, and then also with the degree of propensity towards obesity with that carbohydrate intake. Okay. So for example, I'll have clients that will have a range. And we usually do what's called an 8-week reset. The science seems to be showing that electrical panel I talked about, if you, for 8 weeks, do the dietary approach that's optimal for you, for your bioenergetics, if you do the optimal amount of supplements, the optimal amount of sleep and calming and all that kind of stuff, for 8 weeks, you can probably reset most of your genes to their best position. And so for those 8 weeks, I'll have clients that are, and I don't mean vegetable carbohydrates, I mean like starchy vegetables, fruits, rice, those kind of carbohydrates. They will have those maybe 1 of 3 eating times in a day at like half the size of their protein. That would be kind of the smallest amount that some people could tolerate. And in your case, for instance, I would probably have it not be any gluten-containing products, no breads, no pastas, no that. Just use maybe sweet potatoes, yams, fruit, for example, as that. And then I have other clients who have like genes that are not poorly responding to carbohydrates at all, and they will have at all 3 of their meals, they will have some of those starchier substances at up to say 2/3 the size of their protein. So that's the kind of range you can get in depending upon carbohydrates. So it can be an issue with the glyphosate. It can be an issue, as you mentioned, with the difference in the way the wheat is grown. We tend to grow wheat in Canada and the US that has much more of the fleshy glutinous component to it than did the original ones that were coming out of Europe, which is often why people do a bit better over there on the pastas and breads or pizza doughs or whatever. So that's going to give you 3 or 4 different things that could have contributed to that.
Okay. I don't have celiac disease, but I do notice that if I eat carbs like early in the day, I will feel less productive throughout the day. But it's crazy to me. Like we were talking about this earlier, it's crazy to me. I can go to an Asian, there's an Asian place close to my house and they do the whole hibachi thing and all that. But it's crazy because I can go there and I can ask for no soy in the food. And it's like a completely different meal. Some would argue that kind of takes the flavor out of it, but it's a completely different meal as far as how you feel after or the next day. And you were talking about the bone broth, they do the bone broth soup. Oh my God. First of all, it tastes amazing, but then it's like the best hydration drink I've ever had is like a bone broth, like just I don't know if it's the salt level or what, the sodium, whatever it is, but it's like you just feel you just feel better after that. I love Asian food. I think it's very good, but it's just crazy that you asked for the no soy, and we were talking about sugar. Like, it's crazy how you feel when you limit your sugar intake to little or none. We have things, we were talking here earlier about like this high fructose corn syrup that's like really illegal in other countries. And you know what's crazy too is it's actually sad to see here in America, but like I heard a statistic, and I don't know if this is right, but I think something like 40% of American children are overweight. And that is insane, man. Like, that is crazy that we have 40% of children who are overweight. And it's like, dude, I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole because that's really going to irritate me to even talk about that. But it's like, how do we get to this point? You know, like, how are these things here in our food? And then we go to Europe somewhere, and these things do not exist. They're not even legal, I don't think. I'm pretty sure high fructose corn syrup is illegal. There's a couple other things. Like, I don't drink soda, and soda's already bad enough. But if you look at a soda bottle, you know, the ingredients here, like the label is like half. It's like half as much in Europe. And it's just like, how did we get here? Like, why are these? Is it just cheap calories? I'm sure that's what it is. It's just cheap calories. It's just a filler probably. But it's like, it really irritates me because I'm very grateful to live in America, and I'm very grateful to have the opportunity and to be able to speak to you freely the way we are right here. But I just find it almost the arrogance of the statement to say that we have things figured out is really is mind blowing to me. Because it's not just food, and I don't mean to go off on a tangent here. It's not just food; it's education. You know, we go to another country, and these people are speaking a minimum of 2 or 3 languages. I understand English is a very common language. I understand that. But the problem is they can communicate with me if I go to their country, but I can't communicate with them if they come to my country. So like, where's the discrepancy? Like, who's really got it figured out here? You know, I don't know. It really irritates me, man. And then like I said, with the overweight, with the children, you know, being overweight, and I don't see any reason that 40% of children should be overweight. I don't see how that's even possible, and how we're allowing this to even exist. And we have these things on the shelf that's just, you look at the breakfast for most Americans, like the breakfast that's advertised on TV, the cereals and everything. That's mostly just sugar, man. That's all it is. It's just like sugar and just like empty carbohydrate, and there's like nothing there, you know? I mean, you might be getting a little protein from the milk, but I think that the understanding is, in the fitness world, the best breakfast you can have is a high fat, high protein breakfast. Like that's what actually you're supposed to have. I'm pretty sure. But anyway, I just, you know, I don't know, man. I'm gonna get off on a tangent here because this is something that really bothers me because, when I say these things, I think people think I'm kind of like taking shots at my country, and it's like, oh, you're not patriotic. It's like, no, I am patriotic. This is why I'm trying to, like, you know, ask, hey, what the hell are we doing here? And like, how do we get here?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
I mean, it's a topic near and dear to my heart. I wrote a book on childhood obesity 10 years ago because it was already so like just mind-boggling to me at the direction that we were going. And it's complicated. I like to believe that no one at higher levels in the food industry, the soda pop industry, the processed, you know, marketed types of foods is sitting there deliberately trying to make people sick. So I can have my paranoid hat on and just kind of go nuts with that. But for the most part, I don't go there. I just think it's a money issue. Mm-hmm. It is, you know, we can process foods, we can have a longer shelf life, we can get rid of the higher cost ingredients, substitute them with low cost, like high fructose corn syrup or sugar or whatever. We can make them very palatable. Michael Moore wrote a great book on bliss points, fat, sugar, salt. Michael Moore? Yes, I think that was who it was. And just the way that in the food industry today, you know, it's no longer like these white-haired grandmas in there with these aprons, you know, kind of coming up with this very amazing homemade cookie or muffin. It's actually, you know, nerdy scientists with pen protectors, pocket thingies, you know, kind of going, okay, how can we get this right amount of salt, right amount of sugar, right amount of fat, right amount of chemicals, so that we hit this bliss point, which really the definition of it is the hedonistic pursuit of food, regardless of whether you're full or not. Like, that is what it is. It's like we want this food to be so hyper palatable that it will override people's sense of fullness. So they will just continue to mindlessly watch the Netflix binge while they are, dipping their hands in the potato chips or whatever. So, I feel like my book was written kind of to try to help parents wake up to the fact that this is what's going on around you, and you are the guardian of your home. Like you're the adults in the household. I remember I got to know a family a number of years ago. I was working with one of their children who had really bad eczema, and they did great. We got it all cleared up, and he was doing fine. And they came back for a checkup about a year later, just kind of touched base with me, and because the kid's eczema had come back in full force, and I knew them well enough that I could joke with them like this. But I said to him, "Oh, so since I saw you last, like, you've got a job?" He says, "No." "Well, have you started buying all the household groceries?" He says, "No." I'm going, "Mama, you knew what cleared this up last time. You knew what contributed to this, And he was gracious enough to take my gentle chiding and say, "Yeah, I know. But I have a heart for parents because, like, let me tell you, you are up against big advertising, culture. You're swimming upstream in a culture that is fast everything, that wants to rightfully not have you raising your children in diet mentality, because we've all learned that was a big fiasco. 6-year-olds worried that they're fat, etc. So we don't want diet mentality. But what's happened, I feel like, is parents have swung over here where they're just like, okay, we want everything to be available in our house. We want our children to feel free to eat it whenever they want. And they do not understand the scientific and genetic responses in children. They, like, once your palate has succumbed to the dark side, you're not going to say, "Oh, I'm really feeling like broccoli right now." You're going to say, "Oh, I really feel like another 100-calorie bag of these whatever snack chips," And so we threw the baby out with the bathwater. Yep. And so we no longer have diet mentality, which is great. I shouldn't say we no longer. We're working at getting rid of that. But we went with an everything in moderation approach, which is completely ridiculous. These are foods that were not even eaten 200 years ago. We don't have the ability to process this amount, the amount of sugar, the amount of refined grains that is coming without the nutrients that you need even to help break it down well and be able to be absorbed. So yeah, we have a very caloric rich diet that's very nutrient deficient, and it's setting our kids up for poor energy, not sharpness in school, moods all over the place, and yeah, obesity or underweight. We've got some kids that are suffering from underweight as well. So yeah, you're preaching to the converted here, Cody.
Yeah, well, it's crazy, man, because I don't know the principle or the philosophy or whatever this is called. This is some sort of psychological, like the marketing industry knows this. If you walk into a grocery store, a smaller, not like a supermarket, but a small grocery store, you almost always go to the right. And almost always at the right are the vegetables and the produce and all that. And as you go around the store, you get to the meat and you get to the dairy. And at the very end of the store, you have the ice cream and the sweets and the alcohol and everything. And in the center of the store, you have everything that has a shelf life, a couple years, whatever it is, the rice and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But there is a principle, and I wish I knew what it was called, because you mentioned about parents having a lot going on. There a lot of parents these days, both parents are working, and by the time they get home, they're exhausted and they just want a simple dinner. But it's like, whatever this principle is, when you shop around the store, it's like you get mentally exhausted. And by the time you get to the ice cream, you're just like, oh, what the hell? We'll just get it. It's just, what's a 6-pack? We'll just get it. We'll just get the beer, whatever. But it's like, it's designed that way because it's, I don't want to say it's manipulation, but it does play off of whatever this principle, whatever this psychological principle is. And the marketing industry knows this. That's why the candy bars are set up at the register. It's just like, oh, you're already there. You're waiting in line. There's a couple people in front of you, and it's just, whatever. You're mentally exhausted from the shopping and all that kind. And so it's crazy that it's designed that way. But I don't know, man. I see your point about these things being a cheap filler for the foods. And first of all, a calorie eaten is not a calorie eaten. Like you can have 100 calories in a bag of chips or 100 calories in a piece of chicken, and they're not the same thing. But I don't think like the food industry trying to be as, let's say, as efficient as possible and feed as many people as possible. I don't think that's an excuse. And I don't even think that's a healthy way to do it anyways. I don't think you can just go and just dump a whole bunch of processed sugar or, carcinogenic, GMOs or whatever it is into the food and say, all right, well, there's your calories. That's not a solution, man. It's not going to work that way. Like I'm not even a human biologist, and I can tell you it's not going to work that way.
No, well, and we're seeing the results of that, and it does come back to the way that we are, like not even looking at genetics, but just human biology and the way that we are wired and the nutrients that we need to be able to produce energy, to have our mitochondria produce ATP, etc. Like we need real food for that. Now, some dietitians will say that yes, that food does break down to sugar, and all food eventually breaks down. We use glucose as our main source of fuel, but I think we are missing the microscopic nutrients that are part of that. We're missing the sense of satiety and satisfaction that came if there was like a healthy fat with that, as opposed to the polyunsaturated fats, which most of the processed food uses, which is, we need very little of that. We need more of the monounsaturated and more of the saturated. So we're supplying a really bad version of nutrition and expecting it to help us thrive. And it's unfortunate because it's the wrong message, and it is leading us further and further down a path towards illness instead of a path towards wellness and energy and vitality. So that's
Yeah, it is sad. And what's also crazy too, we were talking about this, the sugar earlier. Like I've seen people who claim to have zero sugar in their diet, and man, they look incredible. I mean, we're talking about collagen and the red light therapy and all this kind of stuff. Like no sugar. Like if you want to take care of your skin, skip out on the sugar, man. Like, geez, like I don't know what it is about. It's like sugar and alcohol seem to age your skin way quicker than anything. Like it's crazy. Like you'll see people who do the sauna and they don't do the sugar. They're taking collagen every day, whatever, and they just look. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic how they look. And that's one thing. I'm really big on that too. I'm big on skin health, taking care of your skin, and because I work out. I own a landscaping company, so I work outside. I'm always wearing the big hat and the long sleeves and this kind of thing, and because excessive sunlight is also bad for your skin. But it's just
you got to really balance the sunlight out. Like
for sure.
We're just back. We were in the sun, but you don't want to burn. Like you want to make sure that you're getting your vitamin D levels, but it's not excessive. And then yes, absolutely, lots of hydration, because that'll really age skin. And then the collagen, getting the proteins that you need for that, getting the phytochemicals that are in fruits and vegetables. So it is a lot of it. And then enough fat. Like people that are, if you're not getting enough of the fat that you need, like what do you think your cell membranes are made out of? Like it's like we have this gap between how we think we got these bodies. I'm like, the food you put in your mouth is growing your body. So let's see how you can get that happen as ideally, as optimally as possible. And skin is super important. I mean, skin is your biggest detoxification organ. We didn't even talk about detoxification today, but that plays a huge role in wellness. How you're eliminating toxins through your skin, through your lungs, through your bowels, through your urinary tract, and then even how you can help support your genes that deal with phase 1 detox and phase 2 detox. Because that plays a huge role in your long-term health as to whether you are actually getting rid of these things that we're exposed to now more of on a daily basis,
Right.
pesticides, herbicides, or even just your workouts, or you naturally produce free radicals as a byproduct of a workout or a run or whatever. So you
Mm-hmm.
want a body, you want a liver that's healthy enough to be able to take care of that and eliminate those toxins in a timely manner. So that's really helpful too.
You know, what's crazy. I had a guest on here, Heather Creason, and she was talking about the lymphatic system and how, proper drainage of the lymphatic system can help you detox your body. And I was completely clueless about this, before our conversation. And she's like, no, yeah, you can get a massage that basically does this and you can do it yourself type
Yeah.
thing. And I'm like, this is crazy that why are we not taught this? Like, why
Yeah.
am I 30 years old and I'm just hearing about this?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Like, why did you not learn how to dry brush? Why did you not learn, that, yeah, you have a lymph system that's a passive
Mhm.
system. It doesn't move by your cardiovascular system. It has to be by movement, either through your own legs and arms or lymphatic massage, dry brushing, whatever. Like this is things that Ayurvedic medicine, traditional Chinese medicine. I mean, it was just the normal part of your existence. And then, you know, us, kind of medical model, often white people just thinking, oh, we're not going to ask any questions and learn anything from these people. We're going to just assume that we know better. Like, don't even get me started on colonization and everything else. Like, we have not done a good job of being humble and learning from other cultures and understanding the values that they had and how that could
Mhm.
be beneficial for us as well. That would be a whole other topic of that. But yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
and there's so much we can learn there from different cultures. Like like
Yeah.
grounding. Most people in North America don't even know what grounding is, and they don't even like they go to the beach and they walk on the beach and they think that the beach itself is and it might be what makes them feel euphoric. I don't know, but they
Yeah.
are grounding while they're there. Their bare
Yeah.
feet are touching the ground, and that's a
Yeah.
huge thing that nobody does because we live in concrete cities and we always wear shoes, and
Yeah.
it's whatever, man. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
Look, I'm going to have to close out of here in a couple minutes. This has
Yeah.
been a really, really productive conversation. I think I'm going to get with you and see how we do this genetic test because I'm curious. I'm curious about myself now.
Absolutely.
I want to know myself a little more.
Oh, I know it's really fun, Cody, is if you do it, then you have me back on and we'll discuss your information for everyone to hear. I did that with one set of podcast hosts. It was really fun. We got to kind of,
Yeah.
depending how vulnerable you want to be, it is
Yeah. Well,
an
I don't know, man.
interesting
I'm just
conversation.
because I am a person like I want to be efficient's not the right word. I want to be, well, I guess efficient and productive and,
Yeah.
whatever it is that I have that is a benefit. I want to capitalize on that, and something that's a flaw, maybe improve that. But I mean, there's
Yeah.
a lot of it would take, I don't know, 50 years to do trial and error and on this thing. And you don't know, you just
Exactly.
have these. And I think it's amazing these days that we have this that we can do, and we can say,
Yeah.
okay, well, this is it. This is the information. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm really interested in this. I want to see what's going on internally with me.
Okay.
Where can people find you? Do you have a website or social media or?
Yeah. Yeah. So Imbalance LM, lifestyle management is the L and the M. So imbalancelm.com. And that's my Instagram handle as well as Imbalance LM. Facebook, same thing. And then they can go to my website and there's some free resources there, a little self-check that you can do as to whether something to do with epigenetic work might be helpful for you. There's a free little infographic on there about epigenetics. So, and my last book is on there. It's super low cost. It's just digital, and it was kind of an introduction to body type and doing personalized wellness a little bit differently. So those are all resources, and yeah, and I meet with people all over the world. So it's great. I
Okay.
love Zoom.
Yeah. I want to ask this because I know this is probably going to come to some people's minds. What when you do this, I'm sure there's a confidentiality thing involved here, like
Yeah.
just
Okay.
to
So,
ease people's mind.
oh, totally. Like social work, nutrition, pastoring, like confidentiality to the max. So when someone works with me one-on-one, yes,
Mm-hmm.
I get their raw data. It doesn't go anywhere else. I obviously don't sell it to anyone or do anything like that. And I never talk about other people unless they have given me permission to say something about, and they'll tell me to use their name or not use their name or whatever. And then the other thing is if people have concerns of privacy and confidentiality with their DNA itself, where they actually get it done, 23andMe is typically the most cost effective. They've also had some major data breaches. Okay. There's also some concern with them. That's who I did mine originally with, that they potentially sell to pharmaceutical companies or whatever. So some people are concerned about that. And that's why I mentioned the DNAallure.com. That one is out of Canada, but they will ship anywhere that FedEx goes. They have no ties whatsoever to any kind of pharmaceutical. They don't even keep your data once you get it. So if people are concerned about that, I would suggest using DNA Allure and get their genetic kit instead. And I can use that raw data as well.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So one last thing before we close out, if you had to sort of pinpoint, or if you could share, if it's something from your personal life that you're comfortable sharing, or your career, what would you say is one of the most important lessons you've ever learned? One of the most valuable lessons? I know it's hard to kind of pinpoint the most important, but just maybe one of the most important or one of the most valuable lessons you've ever learned.
I think that you have a lot more control over your physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being than you think. I look back at, I was a very sick social worker. I didn't start off, having the energy and mental clarity and, all that kind of balance that I have now. And I hit a major roadblock there. And it was through doing some work with an herbalist, super smart guy, member of Mensa, was doing vitamin formulations for different companies, that kind of thing, new science. He got me turned around, and to the point of going, oh man, I do not have to be sick like this. I was sickly kid, sickly teen, sickly 20-year-old. I can actually make some changes that are going to improve the way I am in my body, that can improve the way I think. I don't have to be anxious all the time. I don't have to be prone to depression. I can have these things more clear. I can grow in my spiritual well-being in a way that's very different than I thought. And I just think that was one of the biggest lessons I learned, was that, we don't control everything, but we do have some control over our responses to things. And in that, there's a lot of power.
I love that, man, because I think that a lot of people feel like, whether it's physically or mentally or maybe even emotionally, I think a lot of people feel like these things can't be changed. This is probably the key problem I have with the statement of I have depression. It's like saying I have green eyes, I have brown hair. That's just how it is. But it's like, maybe you do have a chemical imbalance, but there's probably something you can do to change the way you feel. Because the way, if you have a mental imbalance mentally, that's different from feeling a certain way. And so it's I think a lot of people will appreciate hearing that, if something's not ideal in their life, they can change it. It can be changed.
Yeah. I mean, there are some chronic conditions. I never want to minimize those and the amount of maybe pain or, dealing with childhood trauma, for example, those kind of things. I'm not in any way minimizing that, or not saying that doesn't have some long-lasting implications. But there's, like you said, there's almost always something that can be done to either slightly alleviate that or be able to help us respond to it differently, help us see things in a different way. I just want people to be open to the potential that things could be different. So, yeah.
Yep. Listen, man, I really appreciate it. This has been a great conversation. I think I'm gonna do this. I think I'm gonna get this test done and see what's going on. And hopefully
get it done. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Be in touch. I'll let you know which kits you need to get. And I think you would love it. I think you would find it really interesting. Okay?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, because I want to see. Yeah. So I was asking earlier, do you have to fast for this? Do you have to not take vitamins for a week?
No, nothing. Because it is just looking at your genes. Those don't change. So just make sure you do the spit test well. or the
Mhm.
swab. DNA Allure uses a swab. So get lots of saliva in your mouth, gently kind of chew your cheeks a bit so there's some sweet cells in the saliva before you do the swab test or the spit test, and that will give you the best chance of them being able to read as much data as possible. So no preparation for it needed. 23andMe often has sales on around holidays, so you can keep an eye on there. With 23andMe, you need what's called their health and ancestry kit. It's usually around $249. I don't know what it is in the States. And then with DNA Allure, they have a skin kit, but then they have a genetic kit, and it's the genetic one that you need. I get more data from that. So yeah, either one of
Okay.
those. And once you get it, you just send me your genome file, and we book a session, either a one-off, or once people do the one-off, then they're like, when's the next time you're running the 12-week one? I want to dig into this deeper. I want to really geek out. I am just so thrilled I can bring people into geeking out about their genetics. So it's fun.
For sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. If it piques your interest, go for it. A couple of my kids have had it done and find it really helpful. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I'm gonna stop this video. I'm gonna close out. Hang out for just a second. Let me explain to you something. Yeah. No, I definitely appreciate it. Definitely appreciate your wisdom and insight. And yeah, we'll do this, and we'll do this again and see what's going on underneath here. So
sounds good. Thanks for your good questions, Cody. It was a good conversation.
Thank you. Hey guys, I appreciate everybody tuning in today. If you enjoyed this podcast or enjoyed this episode, you can find more at Pure Wisdom Podcast. This is on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Rumble, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple and Google Podcasts. There you can subscribe, like, and share and interact with all of our content. Again, we appreciate it, and we will see you next time.